Let me be very clear about one thing. The United States does not want a peaceful transition of power in Venezuela. It wants a war in Venezuela. Because even these misinformed, deluded people in our government cannot tell you what they plan to do, even if Nicolas Maduro would step down today, about the millions and millions of die-hard Chavistas in Venezuela. You think these people are just going to go, oh, I guess we're just going to be pro-US now. We're just going to convert ourselves to neoliberals? You're out of your mind. These people will fight and die to the last man, even if Maduro goes away. Proof in point, Chavez died. And they are still here. They don't call it Madurismo, do they? No. You can't kill the idea. You can kill the man. And you can depose the leaders. And I have a question. I really do. If Maduro would step down, they have a vice president. Her name is Delcy Rodriguez. She would be the president. It doesn't just automatically mean because you get rid of one guy that the entire government goes away. What about Jorge Ariaza, their foreign minister? What about Tariq Saab, Tariq al-Assami? All of the people that are in their line of succession, do they just not count? Do the millions and millions and millions of people that voted for this government, do they just not count? And I really have a question for Mr. John Bolton. And this was his quote. I thought the finances of Venezuela belonged to the Venezuelan people, not random guy named Juan. So you might want to watch your syntax, because you might reveal to the world what your plan actually is. There are tens of thousands of ELN and FARC fighters in Colombia right now. In Colombia, not Venezuela, who side with the Chavistas. What do you think is going to happen if they try to launch a war using Colombia? The Colombians, with the help of the United States, have not been able to defeat the FARC, have not been able to defeat the ELN. I don't care if Maduro leaves 5 minutes from now. Juan Guaido or this woman Machado, they are never going to rule Venezuela. The reason that Nicolas Maduro is in power, he won. He beat Radonsky. And prior to beating Radonsky, before he died, Chavez thumped Radonsky 55-44. This isn't some small, tiny group of people that are just the ruling elite. In fact, it's the exact opposite. The people that are trying to take power are the minority, trying to make you believe they are the majority, and they are not. The minute one U.S. boot crosses that border into Venezuela, this entire picture is going to change, just like it changed on the 11th. You need to ask yourself a question. Where were all of these spontaneous protests for the opposition all of last fall and winter? There weren't any, were there? Right, because they had to be engineered by the United States. These are not spontaneous protests. These are not people of Venezuela standing up for Venezuela. There's a very tiny group of Venezuelans based in Miami with a lot of money and a lot of power in the media that are making you believe something that isn't true about Venezuela. And even as an American, whether you agree with Chavismo or not, whether you agree with it or not, it is the largest group of people politically in Venezuela right now. It does not matter if Maduro is in power or not. It doesn't matter if you buy off his generals like they did with this guy. The leader of their Air Force decided to bail. It doesn't matter. The people have taken control of that country. And they are organized. And they will maintain control of that country, regardless of random guy named Juan or this woman named Machado, that they want to put in power, or what the U.S. recognizes as power. You see, this is the part the United States does not get. And USNI, believe it or not, I've used this particular website to talk about the Fitzgerald issue. They have a report on Venezuela. And it looks like page 8, when they talk about the legacy of Hugo Chavez, they accidentally do a little bit of reporting without meaning to. Now, the first 7 pages are just propaganda put out by our government, but they can't lie about this. In December 1998, Hugo Chavez, a leftist populist representing a coalition of small parties, received 56% of the presidential vote, 16% more than his closest rival. Now ask yourself a question. Why would that be? If the pro-US government in the 90s that existed was so popular and was so tied to personal wealth for the entire country, why would Hugo Chavez have won going away like that? And why would he have been reelected 3 more times, and then the guy that he named to succeed him win again? And then win yet again in 2018, but now they decide they just don't pretend that all didn't exist. See, there were 2 very powerful parties, just like we have here right now, the Republicans and the Democrats. Down there, it was the Acción Democrática and the Social Christian Party. Still, both way far to the left of anything going on in the United States. And they kept power all the way up until 98 for a very tiny group of elitists tied to the United States and big oil and big business. And finally, the people of this country had enough, and that led to the rise of Chavez. And that's why they maintained power and still hold on to power. What the U.S. is trying to do is make you believe something that isn't true. And even if you want to make the stupid allegation about the dictatorial nature of Chavismo, really, I got 2 words for you. It's called the Patriot Act and our Department of Homeland Security. You really must be kidding. The U.S. is going to now lecture people on the rights of the populace, on freedom, on liberty, after the Patriot Act. Really. There is no greater dictatorial authority on the planet, nor has there ever existed one, greater than Washington, D.C. And let me say this one time again, I'll say it every time I can. When I refer to the U.S., I'm not talking about the people of Kansas. I'm not talking about the people of Montana. I'm talking about this tiny little pseudo-state on the East Coast called the District of Columbia that has used very powerful, very wealthy people to make the rest of this country believe they're way more powerful than what they really are. They're criminals and they're thugs. And they need to go away, and we need to rule ourselves as 50 independent nations again. Because that's what we did. The original 13 quote-unquote colonies were really 13 independent nations. The people of South Carolina really didn't have very much to do with the people of Massachusetts at that time. They had their own version of what they thought prosperity would be. And it was supposed to always be that way, a very loosely bound group of people. This will end badly for the United States. You mark my words, it will. Even if Maduro steps down, there will be a bloodbath down there like no other. And they don't even need the help of the Russians. They don't need the help of the Chinese. They will fight and die to the last man. And I brought this picture up just to show you the hypocrisy of, evil dictators. We don't deal with evil dictators. Really? Is that so? Is that so? I need everyone out there to watch this guy on the right, this Bolsonaro from Brazil. Maduro hasn't said very much about Duque because he knows that he's basically in the pocket of big drug dealers. But this guy Bolsonaro, I know this might surprise a lot of Americans, but this guy will act independently of America, North America, the United States. He doesn't give a rat's ass about what our designs are, about what our desires are. He will roll into that country, and before we have any chance to react, this guy has the ability. And mark my words, I know a lot of people don't know about Brazil. They have the power. They could overrun that entire continent. And they could control everything from Panama all the way down to Antarctica and do it in less than a year. That's how powerful the Brazilians are. So we need to be real careful about who we are calling allies. And this guy has powerful friends, and I'll let this picture speak for itself. The wealth of the people of Venezuela belongs to the people of Venezuela. Not to Juan Guaido, not to any government. It's theirs. And that's in their constitution, that it's theirs. It's not in ours. Big oil companies take the wealth of the United States and enrich a very tiny group of people. And that's been going on for a long time. Almost every country in the world has some type of a mechanism in their government to ensure that things like metals and oil and natural resources somehow, some way benefit the people. Not the United States. Not since 2015, when we repealed the ban on exporting oil for profit. The U.S. has no idea what's waiting for it. If this government is so deluded that it thinks that even if it would depose one man, that it would somehow change the mind of the millions and millions of people that have supported the current government down there for 2 decades, I know that this government's done some stupid things, but mark my words, I'll say it again, this will be the greatest geopolitical miscalculation in the history of the United States, perhaps in the history of any major power anywhere. We have zero chance of this ending in anything other than something so much worse than Vietnam. Be careful who you side with. Be careful who you believe in, because history repeats itself. Like, share, subscribe.